the selection process of jurors in this Trump criminal trial is underway, and
it's a big deal, actually.
Yeah, it's a big deal, and there's a lot you can cover. But we found a tweet that perfectly sort of positions what we're looking at today, and he says this comes from Travis in Flint on Twitter, on X. He says, day 2 of the jury selection in the Trump trial begins today, as of this Tuesday. Yesterday, 50 of the 96 prospective jurors were excused after saying they can't be impartial and give Trump a fair trial. But guess what? A majority of the ones excused were white women. Travis leaves us with, I honestly believe Trump's best chance for a fair trial is to avoid any white women in the jury pool.
That's just funny, but I don't think that's actually what's most important about this. It's the questions that were asked that are kind of unprecedented in shaping up this juror pool. And that's where we really want to get a lot of your insight on some of those questions that were asked.
Yeah.
Sure. And I think the first one to talk about is the one that, whatever that guy's name is, Travis in Flint. And not to disparage his legal analysis, I actually think he nailed it. He got the most important question right up front, which is this idea that the court is going to ask the prospective jurors. And I can get into the voir dire process and explaining how jury selection works if you like. So yeah, I guess that's probably helpful context.
Yep.
So the way it works, and many of your listeners and maybe even you guys have been called onto jury duty before. Have you guys ever had that experience?
I have. Yep.
I haven't.
Okay. So the way it works, and you can call me on my BS if I'm wrong here, but is they pull you into the courthouse and you sit in a big room. And first off, they just give you numbers where it's just, this is a number. It's just a cattle call. And It's like, all right, first 40 into courtroom A. And the 40 people file into courtroom A and they sit in numbered seats 1 through 40. And then you start asking questions. And then these questions, some of them are stock questions. Larimer County, where we are right now, has a set of questions where they ask jurors. But then also the attorneys in the case on both sides get a chance to propound questions, give them to the judge and say, these are the questions that we want to ask. And sometimes you can ask really direct questions. What do you do for a living? Although that's going to be on your jury questionnaire.
Right.
But when you want is to get some questions that give you a little bit more depth. And you can ask some really creative questions. A question I like to ask people is, do you shower before or after work? Because that lets you know whether they sweat for a living.
Yeah, are you a blue collar?
But you don't want to appear as if you're asking a question that might be monetary based, that might make somebody feel like, oh, you're thinking you here in your fancy suit are asking me if I work hard for a living. It's like, you're damn right I work hard for a living. And they might develop kind of an opinion about you that isn't favorable.
Right.
And so you might want to mask what you're asking by asking a more creative question. And I've found that, do you shower before or after work, I think is a telling question.
Right.
And there are several. There's an infinite number of examples. But what's important is the lawyers on the case go back and forth and help establish the questions.
Okay, so the actual 42 questions that were being asked of the potential jurors was released. And I guess from the legal standpoint, with your knowledge, how do people need to sort of think about this? Because I've seen posts that's like, you can't ask people what podcast they listen to. And my immediate reaction was to go there. Mm-hmm. But that's without understanding the context of what you're trying to accomplish.
Right.
And so
in order to be a juror, truthfully, right, you're trying to be as impartial as possible.
Right.
Obviously, defense wants people to be as partial to that side as the other, right, and vice versa. And so,
and I
correct
guess
me if I'm wrong.
That comes down to a kind of a fundamental requirement that people need to understand about our system, which is it is the adversarial system, which means that if Darius and Samson are the two lawyers and I'm the judge, it's my job as the judge to be the neutral, right down the middle, impartial. It is not Samson and Darius's job to do that. Not at all.
Right.
The idea is if Darius advocates for his position as hard as he can, I want jurors, if you're the prosecution, I want jurors that are going to convict. I want bloodthirsty animals who are looking to put bad guys in jail.
Right.
Samson, if you're on defense, you want the exact opposite. You want sympathetic, bleeding heart people that don't think that the justice system works and we should keep people out of incarceration all day long.
Right.
And so that's this idea that you guys will both attack this impartiality, these questions, this jury selection. You're going to attack it from both sides in a very partial way. And the structure is set up by the judge and the court and the rules of civil procedure or criminal procedure as apply here in New York. That applies the neutrality. And you guys attack that hard from either end. And that's what kind of keeps it in the middle.
and correct me if I'm wrong, I've watched a few episodes of Lincoln Lawyer, so I think I know what I'm talking about here.
No big deal.
No big deal.
I don't even know what Lincoln Lawyer is.
It's a great show, but the concept being that if I notice somebody is maybe impartial partial against me, I have the option to say, hey, I'd like that person removed. I have a certain number of is it votes? Is that how you say it?
Peremptory strikes is what that's called. Is where
go.
There's a certain number, and it's dependent on jurisdiction, or and I don't know what it is in the New York criminal case, but say you get 5 that you're just able to strike, no cause, no explanation. I don't have to justify this. Just 1, 3, 7, 9, and 11, you're out.
Yep.
The question is strategy, right? Because if you're going to seat 12 jurors, then you might end up going through 60 or 70 potential jurors to find somebody. I mean, like they said, of the 96 people that we asked, all these people
50 are out. Yeah.
And so you really, if you've only got 5 people that you can use your peremptory strikes on, you got to be real strategic and say, these are the people that I do not want. And my gut tells me that white women weren't a category that they really factored in a ton. But I don't know. I've never picked a criminal jury. I've only done civil juries.
Yeah.
So this being labeled as the sort of most exhaustive questionnaire to the person outside of the legal realm, should they be viewing this type of approach with the questions negatively, or just someone trying to find the best possible juror while asking questions that you maybe just don't understand?
Yeah, I think people should have a pretty good view of this process, because it is my belief, and I'm sure it's colored by the fact that I'm an attorney, but my view is that this is a fair process that does pick pretty good juries. And the reason in that is because you've got the stock questions that you ask in the jury questionnaires. When you take those seats, the 40 seats in the room, you get a piece of paper and you fill out the answer to questions. What do you do? Where do you live? What's your income? The basic, mostly just biographical data and a few demographic things. But then when you start getting into these other questions, what's your educational background? For example, high school diploma, college degree, graduate degree, et cetera, right? That's the 4th question on that list. You might think, okay, that's just biographical data, but is it really? Because you start looking at the voting patterns of people that have been to college versus the voting patterns of people that haven't. In a case that involves the former President Trump, people that haven't been to college predominantly favor the former president, whereas people that have been to college statistically don't. And so that may tell you a whole ton of information about your jurors, even though you don't see on face value what this question is asking. And that's okay.
You're saying that if people go to college, that they're more likely to be liberal and anti-Trump? Is that what you're saying?
I know I'm way out on a limb here, but
it's like if you get within 30 miles of the place, you can just feel.
Yeah.
Any college, you can just feel
the socialism. That's what you feel.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, as you have to walk with high legs so you can step over the trash in the street. But ultimately, it really is. It's a good process, and I trust it because both sides are attacking it with equal vigor. And I mean, this comes back, and I'll botch this if I try to quote it, so I'll just kind of paraphrase. In one of the Federalist Papers, and I want to say it was 76, but I could be off base on that, so please don't hold me to it. But in one of the Federalist Papers, they talk about what makes the American system work is its ambition versus ambition. It's the idea that the checks and balances and the balance of power between the branches of our government, between the executive and the legislature, isn't that the president's going to politely say, you know what, Congress, why don't you take this one? Or, Supreme Court or the judicial system, why don't you take this other one? No, it's about each of the 3 branches want power and will strive hard to pull power to their own branch. And it's only through the equal tension of those branches pulling on each other that it stays in the middle. And I think the judicial system and our courts are set up the same way. And I think that these are what these jury questionnaire questions get to.
That's good. That's good.